He walked into that boardroom like he owned the future, but he'd never opened my compliance file. I flagged the exposure once, then twice, and when $98 million evaporated in a single afternoon, the questions started flying. How did nobody catch this? This isn't about corporate politics. It's about what happens when you silence the person reading the warning signs and accelerate straight into disaster. My name is Salem Pierce, and I've dedicated 14 years to building frameworks that keep companies from imploding. Chief Risk Officer at Strive Solutions isn't just a position. It's a responsibility where every word I speak determines whether millions get protected or lost. At least that's how things worked before. The day everything shifted began ordinarily enough. Espresso at 6:15, inbox cleared by 7, and by 8:30 I was finalizing preparations for the most critical presentation of the year. Atlas Industries, a name that made even veteran executives check their presentations twice, was evaluating new risk management partners. Their asset base exceeded $3 billion, their tolerance for mistakes approached zero. I'd compiled everything: regulatory frameworks, exposure assessments, competitive threat analysis that consumed 4 months of development. My department had sacrificed evenings, postponed vacations, survived on takeout and determination. We were prepared. Then Caleb Dawson arrived. Our new CEO moved through spaces like someone who'd never experienced defeat. 39 years old, Wharton credentials, and an expression suggesting he understood things about your destiny that you didn't. He'd been with us exactly 7 weeks. Sufficient time to renovate his executive suite, insufficient time to comprehend how we actually secured clients. Salem, he said, skipping any greeting. Regarding the Atlas presentation. I glanced up from my tablet, noting how he'd positioned himself to block the exit. Classic dominance technique. Everything's scheduled. Final run-through at 3 this afternoon. That's what I wanted to address. He straightened his designer watch. Who wears a $50,000 timepiece to a strategy meeting? I've been evaluating the team structure. The conference room contracted. Around the table, my department members discovered compelling reasons to examine their laptops. The team's been confirmed for weeks, I said, maintaining composure. Helix knows who's presenting. They specifically asked for the company's most important pitch, he interrupted, his smile expanding. It's better if you're not present. The statement landed like a blade through glass. Kevin from compliance literally choked on his coffee. Rita, my second-in-command, appeared physically struck. Excuse me, I said, though I'd heard perfectly. You're exceptional with the analytical work, Salem. Genuinely impressive. But this requires executive gravitas. He paused. I'll be directing the presentation personally. Executive gravitas from someone who needed his assistant to locate the parking garage. I've been developing this account for 9 months, I said. I understand every stakeholder, every concern, which is precisely why you'll brief me comprehensively, he cut in. Decision's final. Send me your materials by 1 o'clock. We'll deliver spectacularly. As if he'd contributed anything beyond his signature on purchase orders. The room remained frozen as he departed. 26 people, and nobody would meet my gaze. They understood what this represented. A public dismantling, corporate style. Assert dominance by eliminating your most capable lieutenant. Management fundamentals, assuming you learned from sociopaths. Kevin finally broke the silence. Salem, this is absurd. You created this entire strategy. He can't simply exclude you, Rita added, though her voice wavered. We all knew he could. He had. I closed my tablet deliberately, carefully. It's acceptable. Acceptable. Kevin's voice climbed. Salem, this is your work, your relationships, I said it's acceptable. But nothing about this was acceptable. As I collected my materials, as I maintained composure before my devastated team, as I walked steadily to my office, something cold and precise locked into position in my thoughts. Caleb Dawson believed he'd secured a victory. He thought this concerned one presentation, one power display, one moment of supremacy. He couldn't perceive the situation clearly enough to realize he'd just initiated something he was completely unprepared for. I settled at my desk and opened a document I'd completed 4 weeks earlier. Atlas Industries. Comprehensive Exposure Analysis. 347 pages documenting every conceivable catastrophe, every regulatory trap, Every financial precipice, including one particular provision buried on page 291. A specific detail about personnel stability requirements, insurance I'd negotiated personally, never imagining I'd need it for protection. I studied the email draft to Caleb Dawson, copying legal, operations and finance. My cursor hovered over send. Not yet. Sometimes the best moves aren't the obvious ones you make immediately. They're the calculated ones you withhold until circumstances align perfectly. I smiled, and for the first time that morning it felt genuine. Caleb wanted to compete. Fine. Let's see how he handles playing without understanding the rules. 4 weeks before Caleb's power play, I'd remained at headquarters until 3:20 in the morning, completing what would become the most consequential document of my professional life. At the time it was simply another exposure analysis. Thorough, comprehensive, destined to be scanned by executives who preferred summaries over substance. The Atlas Industries comprehensive exposure analysis spanned 347 pages. I documented everything: regulatory vulnerabilities across 8 jurisdictions, potential intellectual property conflicts with their Southeast Asian manufacturing partners, budget deviations that could spiral into 9-figure disasters. But concealed in Section 8.4.3, embedded within standard compliance language, was the stability provision. Primary personnel continuity requirement. The risk management partner must ensure that the lead exposure analyst who identified critical vulnerabilities remains actively engaged through presentation completion. Absence of designated personnel during final presentation constitutes breach of preliminary agreement terms. Translation: if I'm excluded from that room, you've violated the contract. The morning after Caleb removed me, I sent the document. 9:47 precisely. Subject line: Atlas Exposure Analysis. Critical review required. I attached the complete file, marked it urgent, and copied every department director who mattered. Then I waited. By lunch I had my answer. Nothing. Not one response. Not even an automated acknowledgement from Caleb's assistant. I accessed the email tracking system we used for client communications. Caleb had opened the email at 9:53. Time spent, 9 seconds. Just long enough to register the page count and dismiss it. Legal opened it at 10:08. They downloaded the attachment but never accessed the PDF. Operations, 10:32. 0 seconds on the document. Rita knocked around 2:15. He's in the executive conference room with his leadership circle. Her air quotes were sharp enough to draw blood. They're developing a new presentation. Let me guess, I said. Excessive animations. Slide transitions that would embarrass a film director. She hesitated at my door. Salem, you need to challenge this. Escalate to the board. Go to. I'm fine, Rita. She studied me. Rita had worked alongside me for 7 years. She recognized my patterns, my tells. You're too composed. Am I? You're planning something. I opened a spreadsheet. Meaningless weekly metrics. I'm performing my job. Caleb wants to lead. Let him. Rita didn't believe me, but she withdrew. Intelligent woman. Plausible deniability would matter eventually. Over the following 4 days, I observed Caleb prepare for his moment of glory. He monopolized the best design talent, demanded revolutionary visualizations, and spent $23,000, I verified, on a presentation consultant from Boston. The man actually rehearsed his entrance. I watched through the glass walls as he adjusted his stride, refined his handshake. He never once inquired about Atlas's executive team composition. Never asked about their risk appetite. Never questioned why they demanded such detailed compliance documentation. His entire approach centered on what he termed the impact factor. Sophisticated graphics projecting exponential returns, promises of synergistic transformation, paradigm revolutionizing solutions. Empty substance in premium packaging. Salem. Naomi from legal appeared Thursday afternoon. Quick question about the Atlas assessment. My pulse accelerated. Certainly. Section 8.4.3. The stability provision. Is that standard? Helix mandated it, I said truthfully. They've been damaged before by contractors who substitute teams after securing business. They want consistency. She nodded slowly. but it specifically identifies the lead exposure analyst. That's their requirement. I kept my expression neutral. I highlighted it in my executive summary, page 4. Right. She glanced at her device. Has Caleb, did he discuss this with you? He has my complete report. Naomi's expression communicated everything. She knew Caleb hadn't read it. Everyone knew Caleb operated on executive summaries and PowerPoint. But she wouldn't confront the CEO. Not her battle. Appreciate it, she said, already retreating. I'm confident it's fine. I returned to my spreadsheet. I'm certain it is. Friday arrived with the intensity of a championship bout. The presentation was scheduled for Tuesday morning. Caleb strutted through headquarters like a peacock displaying plumage, showcasing his final presentation to anyone who'd observe. 112 slides of pure spectacle. Not one addressed exposure mitigation. That afternoon I submitted my leave request. Tuesday. Personal time. The system auto-approved it. No human review required for single-day requests. Caleb would receive a notification buried among dozens of others, assuming he even monitored them. Kevin intercepted me at the elevator. You're not coming Tuesday. Medical appointment. Scheduled months ago. His face cycled through several expressions. He suspected something. Perhaps not the specifics, but he knew I was orchestrating something. Salem. Have an excellent weekend, Kevin. As the elevator doors sealed, I caught my reflection in the polished metal. The woman staring back appeared calm, professional, unremarkable. She looked like someone who'd already secured victory. As I had. Caleb just didn't realize it yet. The most sophisticated traps are the ones people walk into while convinced they're walking toward triumph. And Caleb was practically sprinting. 6 months earlier, I'd sat across from Atlas Industries' chief compliance officer at their Phoenix headquarters. Eleanor Vance was the type of professional who analyzed contracts recreationally and could identify vulnerabilities from across a boardroom. She respected me because I spoke her language. Risk. We've been damaged before, she'd said, sliding a marked contract across the table. Consulting firms promise their elite team, then deploy juniors once contracts are signed. Understandable concern. I'd reviewed their modifications, mostly standard. Then I recognized an opportunity. What if we strengthen this? Make it legally airtight. Her eyes sharpened. I'm listening. A stability provision. Not just for the team generally, but specifically for the lead exposure analyst. I retrieved my pen. The person who identifies your vulnerabilities must be present for the final presentation. No substitutions. That's unusually specific. You want accountability. This guarantees it. The person who understands your risks comprehensively will be in that room, or the vendor is automatically disqualified. Eleanor had actually smiled. I appreciate how you think. We'd crafted it together, developed language so precise it could withstand any legal scrutiny. At the time I was protecting Strive's interests, ensuring our expertise would be valued. I never anticipated needing it for self-protection. Now sitting in my home office Monday morning, I reviewed my strategic move one final time. The provision was beautiful in its clarity. No ambiguity, no executive override. Just cold, inevitable consequences. My phone vibrated. Rita. Caleb's panicking. Says you didn't send him the exposure section. I responded. Everything was in the report. Copied to all departments. He's demanding a summary. Report includes an executive summary. Pages 1 through 6. 3 dots appeared and vanished repeatedly. Finally, this is really happening, isn't it? I didn't reply. Some conversations were better left undocumented. By Monday afternoon my phone erupted like fireworks. 19 missed calls. 51 texts. The escalation followed a predictable pattern. 2:30 p.m. Hey Salem, quick question about Atlas Materials. Caleb. 4:15 p.m. Need to discuss exposure section urgently. TD. 5:45 p.m. This is urgent. Call immediately. Caleb Dawson. 7:30 p.m. Salem, I need those exposure assessments now. 9:15 p.m. This is unacceptable. Respond immediately or face consequences. I powered down my phone and prepared dinner. Pan-seared halibut with roasted vegetables. A crisp Chardonnay. I dined on my patio, watching the sunset paint the horizon in shades of corporate ruin. Tuesday morning arrived clear and bright. I woke at 6, brewed coffee and settled into my garden. My hydrangeas needed attention. Such rewarding work, removing spent growth so fresh blooms could flourish. At 9:07 I reactivated my phone. The notifications arrived in cascades. Missed calls from unfamiliar numbers. Probably Caleb using other people's devices. Messages from colleagues ranging from worried to frantic. 9:15 a.m. Kevin there in the Atlas building. Caleb looks supremely confident. 9:28 a.m. Rita. In the presentation room. Caleb's doing his power entrance. 9:41 a.m. Kevin. Something's wrong. They interrupted him mid-slide. 9:44 a.m. Rita. They're reading documentation. Caleb's face just went pale. 9:46 a.m. Kevin. Security's escorting them out. Zelm, what did you do? I set my phone aside and continued pruning. The morning sunlight felt glorious. My neighbor waved from his yard. Ordinary Tuesday activities. While across town an empire built on arrogance crumbled in real time. The complete story would emerge later, but I could visualize it perfectly. Caleb striding in with his rehearsed confidence. The Atlas team, led by Eleanor Vance, allowing him to begin. Waiting for precisely the right moment, probably after his grandiose opening, to ask the simple question that would obliterate everything. Where is your lead exposure analyst? Caleb would have smiled, perhaps made some executive quip about delegation. Right until they produced the contract. The provision. The requirement. He'd have attempted to maneuver around it. Claimed he was fully briefed. That he possessed the expertise. But Eleanor wasn't the maneuvering type. She was a contract attorney. Words carried weight. Requirements were absolute. Without Salem Pierce present, you're in breach. This meeting is concluded. 7 minutes. That's how long Kevin said the meeting lasted. 7 minutes to incinerate $98 million in potential revenue. My phone rang. Naomi from legal. I answered on the 4th ring. Morning, Naomi. Salem. Her voice was strained. We need you at headquarters immediately. I'm on approved leave today. This is Salem, please. The Atlas contract. There's been a situation. What type of situation? I asked, deadheading another flower. They're claiming we're in breach. Something about a stability provision. She paused. The board is demanding answers. We need you here. I'll be in tomorrow as scheduled. Salem. I submitted my leave request Friday afternoon. It was approved. I have a medical appointment. I examined a particularly beautiful bloom. I'm confident Caleb can handle it. He has executive gravitas. The silence extended long enough to become its own statement. Tomorrow then, Naomi said finally. First thing. Of course. I disconnected and returned to my hydrangeas. Sometimes the most powerful statements aren't dramatic confrontations or heated arguments. Sometimes they're as quiet as pruning shears and morning coffee. While somewhere across town consequences bloomed right on schedule. The genuine beauty of the trap wasn't that Caleb walked into it. It was that he'd had countless opportunities to avoid it. Read the report. Ask questions. Show basic respect for expertise. Instead he'd chosen arrogance. And arrogance, as any competent strategist knows, is its own punishment. I just helped it along. By 10:30, the messages were arriving too rapidly to process. I transitioned from the garden to my living room, feet elevated on the ottoman, laptop open to a financial model I wasn't actually reviewing. The appearance of productivity while Rome burned. Rita called at 10:41. I let it ring 3 times before answering. You need to understand what happened, she said without preamble. I was monitoring the video feed. They let some of us watch remotely. Oh. I reached for my coffee still warm. Caleb entered at 9:14. You know that stride he does? Like he owns the architecture. I made a neutral sound. Eleanor Vance allowed him to complete exactly 3 slides. 3. The third one was about revolutionary synergies or similar nonsense. The coffee tasted exceptional this morning. Colombian dark roast. Then she raised her hand. Polite like a student. Asked one question. Mr. Dawson, where is Salem Pierce? Interesting. He actually laughed, Rita continued. Said you were managing back-end operations. That he was the face of executive leadership. She paused. Salem, I swear he used air quotes around back-end. I could visualize it. Caleb's condescending tone slicing through the room like a dull blade. Eleanor produced a folder. Started reading the stability provision aloud. Section 8.4.3. Caleb attempted to interrupt. She continued reading. The entire room went silent. That must have been uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. Rita's laugh was sharp and bitter. He tried to argue. Said he'd been comprehensively briefed. That CEO participation demonstrated how seriously we valued their business. She inhaled sharply. Eleanor just stared at him. Then she said, and I'm quoting directly, the contract is unambiguous. Your firm is in breach. This meeting is terminated. My neighbor was trimming his hedges. The normal suburban sound contrasted beautifully with Rita's account of corporate disaster. The optimal part, Rita continued, was the elevator descent. The Atlas Facilities director was recording on his phone. Not the meeting, that would have legal implications, but the lobby? Fair game. It's probably circulating on their internal channels by now. How unfortunate. Salem. Her voice dropped. You knew this would happen. I provided a comprehensive exposure analysis. Whether people read it is beyond my control. The stability provision was negotiated with Atlas 6 months ago. It's been in the contract the entire time. I flagged it on page 4 of the executive summary. Silence. Then, by God. Is there anything else? I have an appointment. Yes. One more thing. The aftermath. She paused. Helix sent formal notice to our board within 40 minutes. They're treating it as a material breach of trust. Not just losing the contract. They're questioning our competence as an organization. I set down my coffee cup carefully. That's quite an escalation. $98 million, Salem. That's not a lost opportunity. That's devastation. She inhaled shakily. The board convened an emergency session for 11. Caleb's been locked in his office since they returned. Angela from HR said she heard him throwing things. Throwing things. His awards. You know those glass sculptures he displayed everywhere? Apparently they make quite a sound when they impact walls. The image was almost too perfect. I should go. Medical appointment. Right. Your appointment. Rita paused. You're terrifying when you're calm. You realize that. I'm just taking a personal day. Sure. And Caleb just happened to walk into a buzzsaw. Another pause. For what it's worth. He deserved it. Every bit. I'll see you tomorrow, Rita. I disconnected and accessed my email. 163 new messages. I scrolled through, not opening any, just reading subject lines. Urgent Atlas situation. Emergency session. All hands. Exposure assessment question, critical. Where are the Atlas files? Salem, please respond. At the bottom, time-stamped at 11:06, was one from Eleanor Vance herself. Subject, stability provision. Thank you. I opened that one. Salem, I wanted to personally thank you for your foresight 6 months ago. The stability provision you suggested has proven invaluable in revealing the true nature of Strive's current leadership. When a CEO doesn't even understand his key personnel requirements, it speaks volumes. We'll be reopening our vendor evaluation. Should you find yourself available for independent consulting work, please reach out. Best regards, Eleanor. I read it twice, then archived it. Evidence for later, perhaps. Or just a trophy. By noon the narrative had evolved. Kevin texted updates like a battlefield correspondent. Board brought in external counsel. They're auditing the entire presentation process. Caleb claimed you sabotaged him. Board asked for evidence. He couldn't produce any. Now claiming you withheld information. Legal pulled your email, the one with complete report. Timestamps confirm you sent everything. He's deteriorating. Complete meltdown. I prepared a sandwich. Roast beef and cheddar. Added some of those specialty mustards from the gourmet market. Took my time. The beauty of the implosion wasn't just its magnitude. $98 million would damage any firm. It was the completeness. Caleb hadn't just lost a contract. He'd exposed himself as someone who didn't read critical documents, ignored exposure assessments and blamed others for his failures. In front of the board, with documentation, my phone rang. Unfamiliar number. Salem Pierce speaking. Miss Pierce, this is Hunter Rhodes from the board. We need you at headquarters now. I'm on approved leave, Mr. Graves. This supersedes leave. This is about the Atlas disaster. Disaster? Such a strong word from a board member. I'll be in tomorrow as scheduled. Miss Pierce. Is this a formal board directive? Should I have my attorney present? Pause. No. That won't be necessary. Tomorrow morning then. 8 sharp. Of course. He disconnected without farewell. Board members hate feeling powerless. I finished my sandwich and returned to the garden. The hydrangeas really did look better after proper attention. Sometimes you had to remove the dying parts so healthy growth could thrive. My phone vibrated. One final text from Rita. They just paused the meeting. They're reading the provision. Caleb looks like he's about to detonate. Precisely as I'd imagined it. Except better. Because this was real, documented, and irreversible. $98 million gone in 7 minutes. Sometimes revenge comes with a price tag. Wednesday morning arrived with the type of crystalline clarity that makes you believe in justice. I entered Strive Solutions at 8:03, 3 minutes after my commanded appearance. The office felt different. That particular tension when everyone knows blood is in the water but nobody wants to acknowledge the predators. Salem. Angela from HR intercepted me at the elevator. They're waiting in the boardroom. The full board. External counsel. And, she lowered her voice. Helix sent a formal complaint with documentation. I see. Caleb's been here since 5:30. She glanced around. He's prepared a presentation about your sabotage. I almost smiled. Of course he had. When cornered, create PowerPoint. The boardroom doors opened to reveal a tribunal. 9 board members. For attorneys I didn't recognize. And Caleb sitting at the far end like a defendant who didn't realize it yet. His usual polish had vanished. Wrinkled shirt, stubble, the desperate eyes of someone who'd spent the night battling shadows. Miss Pierce. Hunter Rhodes gestured to a chair. Thank you for joining us. I sat, placed my tablet on the table and waited. We need to understand what happened yesterday, Graves continued. Helix has sent a formal complaint alleging gross incompetence. They've copied our investors. The damage to our reputation. He trailed off. I understand you have questions, I said. Questions. Caleb exploded. She deliberately sabotaged. Mr. Dawson. The lead external counsel, a woman with steel gray hair and prosecutor's eyes, cut him off. You'll have your opportunity. Ms. Pierce, please walk us through your involvement with the Atlas account. I opened my tablet. I led the Atlas pursuit for 9 months. During that time I negotiated the preliminary agreements, including specific requirements Atlas insisted upon. I pulled up the contract. The stability provision was added at their request after they experienced issues with another vendor. The provision Mr. Dawson was unaware of? The attorney asked. The provision documented on page 291 of the Comprehensive Exposure Analysis. Flagged in the executive summary on page 4. Highlighted in the email I sent to all department heads on Friday, September 19th at 9:47. I rotated my tablet screen toward them. The email time-stamped and tracked. I never received, Caleb started. Our tracking software shows you opened it at 9:53. I advanced to the next screen. You spent 9 seconds on it. Silence. The attorney leaned forward. Mr. Dawson, did you read the exposure analysis? I was preparing the presentation. Salem should have verbally briefed me on critical issues. I was excluded from the presentation team, I said simply. Mr. Dawson informed me and I quote, "It's better if you're not present." Board members exchanged glances. But you knew about this provision, Graves said. You knew it would disqualify us. I negotiated it 6 months ago as protection for Strive. It ensured our expertise would be valued. The provision only became problematic when that expertise was dismissed. You took leave deliberately, Caleb stood face flushed. You set me up. I submitted leave on Friday afternoon for a Tuesday appointment scheduled months ago. It was auto-approved. You received notification. The gray-haired attorney pulled out a tablet. Mr. Dawson, I need to ask directly. Did you read any portion of the 347-page exposure analysis? Caleb's mouth opened. Closed. The executive summary? Yes or no? Did you read the exposure analysis? It was 347 pages. Yes or no? He sat back down. No. Another board member spoke up. Ms. Pierce, Atlas mentioned other concerns in their complaint. Budget irregularities. I pulled up another document. Section 5 of the assessment outlines potential budget overruns in their proposed expansion. I identified approximately $41 million in unaccounted costs, which Mr. Dawson didn't mention in his presentation. The attorney read from her tablet. According to Atlas, he promised cost savings of $60 million. The room turned to Caleb. That was projective modeling. Aspirational targets. Based on what analysis? I asked quietly. He glared at me. Strategic vision. Not based on their actual financials? You don't understand executive level. I understand that promising $60 million in savings while concealing $41 million in costs is a $101 million misrepresentation. The word hung between us. Misrepresentation. Board members shifted uncomfortably. The attorney continued her questioning. Each answer revealed more gaps. Caleb hadn't reviewed the compliance requirements. Hadn't verified the financial projections. Hadn't even known Atlas's CFO had changed 4 weeks ago. A detail I'd flagged in my weekly update. Then came the killing blow. Mr. Dawson, Graves said, studying a document, there's a note here about pipeline reporting. Can you explain these numbers? I watched Caleb's face change as he realized they'd expanded the audit beyond Atlas. Those are preliminary projections. They show $170 million in probable contracts for Q4. Graves looked up. But the detail shows most of these as initial conversations, not probable closes. Pipeline inflation, I said. Everyone turned to me. It's in Section 11 of the exposure analysis. Not just for Atlas. System-wide. Our reported pipeline is overstated by approximately 67%. You knew about this? The attorney asked me. I documented it. Friday's report. Page 214. Caleb's face had gone from red to white. Those are aggressive but achievable targets. They're fabrication, Graves said flatly. And you've been reporting them to investors as probable revenue. The audit continued for 4 more hours. Each thread they pulled revealed more unraveling. Inflated numbers. Ignored risks. A CEO who managed by PowerPoint and personality instead of substance. By noon, Caleb had stopped defending himself. He sat there, diminished, watching his career dissect itself on the boardroom table. Thank you, Ms. Pierce, the attorney said finally. We'll need your full documentation. Everything's on the shared drive. Organized by date and topic. As I gathered my tablet, Kevin texted, they're clearing out Caleb's office. Security is present. I walked back to my desk through a silent office. Everyone knew the king was dead. Eliminated not by revolution but by receipts. Rita appeared at my workspace. The board wants you at the emergency all hands at 3. Why? Why do you think? I looked at my exposure analysis files. 9 months of work that Caleb had ignored in 9 seconds. $98 million lost because someone confused confidence with competence. I'll be there, I said. Sometimes revenge doesn't require elaborate schemes. Sometimes you just have to document everything and wait for arrogance to trigger its own audit. Monday morning arrived with a different quality of light. I stood in what had been Caleb's office, now mine temporarily, watching the city wake through floor-to-ceiling windows. The glass sculptures were gone, leaving clean spaces on the shelves. His motivational posters had been replaced with white boards bearing actual strategies. My phone vibrated. A text from Eleanor Vance. Congratulations on the appointment. Atlas would like to schedule a meeting Thursday. 11 I responded, looking forward to it. The office felt different without Caleb's manufactured energy. Quieter but more focused. People made eye contact again. Conversations in the break room lasted longer than 30 seconds. Kevin had actually laughed at someone's joke during the morning meeting. Rita knocked and entered with coffee and a stack of reports. Pipeline audit results. It's worse than we thought. I'd expected that. How much worse? Caleb inflated projections by 81% overall. For completely fictional contracts. 3 clients who'd explicitly declined were listed as probable. Send it all to the board. Full transparency. That'll damage the stock price. Lies damage worse. We take the hit now. Rebuild on truth. She sat down, the coffee made exactly how I preferred it. Something Caleb had never bothered learning about anyone. Salem, can I ask you something? I nodded. That first day when he excluded you from the presentation. You could have fought back. Made a scene. Gone to the board immediately. Why didn't you? I turned from the window considering my words. When someone's determined to dig their own grave, sometimes the wisest move is to hand them a better shovel. Wise isn't the word I'd use. What word would you use? He thought about it. Surgical. After she left, I pulled up the files from the past week. Email trails. Reports. Timestamps. A perfect digital autopsy of corporate arrogance. Everything documented, everything traceable. Not because I'd planned some elaborate revenge, but because I'd learned long ago that in business as in war, intelligence was the ultimate weapon. The truth was simpler than anyone imagined. I hadn't set out to destroy Caleb Dawson. I'd simply refused to save him from himself. When you spend 14 years building expertise, you learn to recognize the patterns. The executive who confuses volume with leadership. The strategist who thinks PowerPoint is strategy. The CEO who believes his title makes him omniscient. They all make the same mistakes. Dismiss expertise. Ignore warnings. Blame others for their failures. And they all fall the same way. Not because someone pushes them, but because they insist on running toward cliffs with their eyes closed. I'd simply made sure the cliff was well documented. By Wednesday things had stabilized. The board approved my comprehensive restructuring plan. For clients who'd been wavering under Caleb's leadership renewed their contracts. The hemorrhaging had stopped. Thursday's meeting with Atlas went better than I dared hope. Eleanor Vance brought her full team. They interrogated us for 4 hours on everything. Our processes, our leadership changes, our commitment to transparency. One question, Eleanor said as the meeting concluded. The stability provision. Did you know Caleb would exclude you? I knew he didn't value exposure assessment, I answered honestly. The provision was insurance against that blindness. She smiled. Expensive insurance. For him. Cost is relative. Depends who pays it. Indeed. She closed her portfolio. We'll restart the vendor evaluation. Strive is invited to bid. Same terms. Same opportunity. Don't waste it. After they left, I stood in the empty conference room where this had all started.